Many adults still carry the pain of childhood, the loneliness of being left alone, the fear that came with violence, and the quiet craving for affection that never arrived. These are not distant memories. They are living echoes inside the body, and because of that, they do not fade simply with age. This is why the earlier section matters so much. It reminds us that what we survived does not automatically transform into what we have healed. Society often repeats the reassuring idea that time will heal everything. Yet time alone does nothing if the wound is still open. When a child grows up without safety, the body learns to tighten. When a child grows up without tenderness, the heart learns to hide. Those lessons remain long after childhood ends, shaping the way an adult walks into relationships, handles conflict, or responds to love. According to Dr. Gabor Maté, trauma is not the event itself, but the inner injury we carry forward. That internal wound becomes the lens through which we see ourselves in the world. But there is hope. A wound can heal when we finally recognize it, when we treat our patterns not as personal failures, but as protective responses that once kept us alive. With understanding and gentle practice, the past no longer has to define the future. And because those earlier wounds still throb beneath the surface of adult life, we need to understand what truly happens inside a child when safety is missing. Trauma is not just a memory. It is a psychological wound that leaves a mark on the nervous system, the body, and the mind, shaping the way a person learns to survive. A wound that becomes a scar carries its own logic. It aches the moment something touches it, and emotional scars respond the same way. A single glance, a forgotten promise, a raised voice can reopen an old fear. A scar is also rigid, limiting flexibility, making it harder for a person to bend, adapt, or trust. Some scars turn numb, creating a quiet emptiness inside, where feelings fade into distance and the world feels muted. Children in unsafe environments create defense mechanisms with remarkable speed. A child may learn to always be correct to avoid punishment, or learn to silence emotions so the pain grows quieter. These strategies were brilliant solutions at the time, yet they slowly become cages that follow the child into adulthood. Growth needs vulnerability. Without a safe place to be soft, imperfect, and held, the wound sinks deeper, and the scar hardens into a pattern that quietly shapes an entire life. When we understand how easily childhood wounds become lifelong patterns, it becomes impossible to ignore the deeper truth. Every scar begins where a natural need was unmet. A child does not step into the world asking for perfection. A child simply asks to be held with warmth, mirrored with kindness, and welcomed by several steady adults who make their presence feel like a safe place to land. The nervous system learns trust only when love feels consistent, not conditional. A child should never feel they must earn affection by being impressive, obedient, talented, or extraordinary. When love turns into something that must be worked for, the child learns to bend themselves into shapes that please others and slowly drift away from their authentic self. That inner abandonment becomes the earliest fracture. Emotional life also needs space to breathe. A child needs room to feel anger without fear, sadness without shame, wonder without interruption. These emotions are not flaws. They are natural signals of a developing brain that learns strength through expression, not suppression. And then there is play, free, unstructured, messy play in nature, where imagination stretches as far as the horizon. In those moments, the child's mind practices creativity, flexibility, and self-regulation. Without these elements, the inner world narrows, and the seeds of later pain quietly take root. Beneath every childhood scar lies a deeper pattern, and the earlier reflection on unmet needs already hinted at it in a quiet way. The root of childhood trauma is rarely the event itself. Two siblings can live in the same house, witness the same arguments, hear the same slamming doors, yet carry very different wounds into adulthood. One may grow distant and controlled, another anxious and desperate for reassurance. What shapes the depth of the injury is whether the child had a safe emotional space where they could stay connected to caregivers and still remain true to themselves. Safety is not only the absence of violence, it is the presence of attuned adults who can hold a child's feelings without turning away. When that space is missing, the nervous system learns to survive by splitting in two. Every child is born with two sacred needs. One is the need for attachment, to be loved, held, protected, and kept close. The other is the need for authenticity, to feel and express what is real inside, even when it is messy or inconvenient. In a healthy environment, these needs support each other, and a child learns that love can hold truth. In a wounded environment, they collide again and again. If anger brings punishment, if tears bring mocking, if honesty brings distance or cold silence, the child begins to understand that truth has a cost that feels unbearable. Faced with this impossible conflict, the child will always choose attachment. Connection means survival. So, authenticity must be sacrificed. Little by little, the child shuts down emotions, reads the room, and shapes their behavior to keep adults pleased and calm. They avoid conflict, become easy, agreeable, and are praised as the good child who never causes trouble. On the surface, this looks like maturity, but inside a quiet betrayal is unfolding. A betrayal of the self that has nowhere safe to go. From these repeated moments, a hidden belief takes root. If I am fully myself, I will not be loved. To protect against that terror, the child builds a performance self, a version designed to be acceptable, safe, and rewarding for others. The distance between the true self and the performing self becomes the root cause of lifelong trauma, echoing through relationships, work, and inner dialogue. The nervous system records this strategy as law and carries it forward into adulthood, making it hard to feel, to trust, or to belong without fear of losing love. Until this split is seen with compassion, healing cannot fully begin. The split between a child's true self and their performing self becomes even more fragile when placed inside the pressures of modern life. And this wider environment adds another layer to the wound. Contemporary culture celebrates achievement above humanity, productivity above presence, and performance above emotional truth. Children grow up in systems that reward grades, speed, and obedience while quietly discouraging the natural expression of feeling. When emotions are treated as problems to fix rather than signals to understand, a child learns to compress their inner world and stretch themselves toward expectations that do not belong to them. In addition, many children become oriented toward their peers instead of receiving guidance from older generations. Without the stabilizing presence of experienced adults, they turn to equally inexperienced friends for direction, belonging, and identity. This shift leaves them vulnerable, adrift, and often overwhelmed by social pressures they are not equipped to handle. Parents still love their children deeply, yet economic demands, long work hours, and social stress make it increasingly difficult for them to meet the natural developmental needs of the young. Love remains, but presence becomes thin, and emotional attunement becomes inconsistent. As these forces combine, the consequences appear with painful clarity. Anxiety does not just rise, it becomes woven into daily life, shaping sleep, focus, and self-worth. Struggles with attention intensify until concentration becomes a battle rather than a skill. Depression settles earlier, leaving children feeling empty long before adulthood. Thoughts of self-harm emerge in younger and younger minds. Strong medications are prescribed at accelerating rates, often as quick solutions to deeper wounds, even though their long-term impact on a developing nervous system remains unclear and deeply concerning. The rising crisis in childhood mental health becomes even more visible when these early wounds follow a person into adulthood, leaving marks that often appear long before they are understood. Many adults find themselves reacting intensely in situations that are objectively safe. Because the nervous system still answers to old alarms. In close relationships, small disagreements can feel like threats, and moments of intimacy can trigger fear rather than comfort. Old childhood patterns also return in subtle but painful ways. Some adults receive love yet immediately associate it with guilt, leading them to push others away or try to control relationships out of unconscious fear. Others begin to identify themselves solely through labels, whether victim, survivor, or even through their job title, slowly shrinking the space where their true self can breathe. This inner contraction often leads to a relentless search for recognition. Instead of living authentically, a person begins performing for approval, shaping their identity around what others want rather than what they genuinely feel. Even siblings raised under the same roof can carry different emotional imprints. Birth order, shifting family stress, and inherited sensitivity all shape how each child absorbs experience. Highly sensitive children blossom in nurturing environments, yet in harsher, chaotic ones they experience deeper pain, becoming more prone to avoidance, addiction, or the pursuit of perfection as a way to cope. As the long shadow of childhood wounds becomes clearer in adult life, the question of how love should function in a child's world becomes impossible to ignore. Unconditional love is not the same as mollycoddling, and confusing the two creates generations of anxious parents and overwhelmed children. Mollycoddling happens when a parent projects their own fear onto the child, offering protection not from real danger, but from imagined threats. The parent believes they are caring, yet the child receives a message shaped by anxiety rather than genuine connection. There is no such thing as loving a child too much. What becomes harmful is loving with fear, loving with tension, loving in a way that teaches the child to see the world as unsafe even when it is not. Longitudinal research shows that children who receive deep, consistent affection in early years develop stronger emotional stability, not weakness. They gain confidence because their nervous system learns safety from the beginning. Moments of loss are crucial teaching points. When a grandparent passes away, when parents separate, or when a beloved pet dies, a child needs guidance, not dismissal. Naming the emotion helps the child locate their inner state. Validating the feeling teaches that sorrow is allowed. Avoiding comparisons prevents shame. Through these moments, the child learns to move through pain instead of shutting it down, building resilience rather than emotional numbness. Healing becomes the natural next step once we understand how early experiences shape the way love and fear settle inside the body. Adult healing is not about rewriting the past, but about learning how the past still moves through present reactions. The work begins by noticing when an old pattern is speaking through a current moment, when a small trigger carries the weight of an earlier wound, and when the nervous system is responding to history rather than reality. Safe vulnerability becomes essential, allowing oneself to be gently open. To reveal truth without collapsing into shame is what allows the inner world to expand again. Authenticity serves as the guiding principle of this process. Being honest with oneself, even when the truth is uncomfortable, reconnects the adult with the self that was once abandoned for the sake of attachment. Stepping out of identity labels is equally important. Labels such as victim or survivor can explain a chapter, but they cannot define an entire life. Healing deepens when a person no longer waits for apologies that may never come, and instead offers themselves the recognition they have always deserved. Community also plays a transformative role, turning toward multi-generational wisdom. Elders, grounded traditions, nature, play, and non-commercial spiritual practices gives the adult a place to belong, a place where the nervous system can soften, and a place where the journey of coming home to oneself can finally continue. As the path of adult healing becomes clearer, one truth rises with comforting strength. Childhood trauma is not destiny, but a wound that can mend. Prevention begins with meeting a child's natural needs and building an environment where fragility is welcomed rather than feared. For those already grown, the work shifts toward living authentically, allowing safe vulnerability, seeking community, and acknowledging one's own pain without judgment. These practices slowly retrain the nervous system to trust life again. The message is simple yet radical. You are not the injury you carried from childhood. Wholeness is still possible, and safety can return to your own body.